Quit yawning, dude.
Yo,
I don't think
yo,
I don't think this podcast would be very good by starting with a yawn.
man. I didn't start it with a yawn. I yawned
Lock it up.
before we started. Do you
Lock
think
it
it'd
up.
be awesome to start with your mouth full of just food and you're like you were doing about 3 minutes ago? I don't even think you finished. Like, why don't you take a second, take some time to yourself and clean out your palate. I can hear all the nastiness.
It was mixed nuts. I was
Yeah,
having
I
some
know.
some nuts for a snack.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. Uh, hey, so we are in Faith Month in TKM. We did a faith podcast that came out as we're recording it. We're recording on Monday, and it came out today. I'll tell you, man, I love this month. It's super challenging. Something that an area of my life that I seek and desire constant growth, but just challenged in so many ways. And I'll tell you, we're going to talk about a quote that that we both were exposed to differently. But I was in church. I was listening to a sermon from not this past week, but the week before, and the whole sermon was we're going through a series in my church called "I Am." And it's basically diving into all the I am statements that Jesus made, and it's awesome. And then during Easter, it overlapped Easter and some of the I am statements Jesus made about being God. And last week they were talking about how he said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life," right? And the way, the truth, and the life. And what he was one of the things he went into is it's difficult for some people. And his focus was around Thomas. Man, gets a bad rap, dude. Thomas, what do we call him in the church?
Doubting Thomas.
Doubting Thomas, right? Because he wanted to put his hands in the wound. I'm sorry, put his fingers in the wound. He wanted to touch the wounds of Jesus before he believed. But one of the things that the pastor was talking about, he said, it's interesting. Thomas asked some really good questions, and he was, he postulated that Thomas was a deep thinker and had some great questions, and then he said, "Man, Thomas, like once he was in, he was all in, man. He did apparently, the ministry that he took to different parts of the world, and just was hugely influential of all the apostles. Was potentially one of the most influential in spreading the word of God and achieving the commission. But it was one of the things he said. He said, "Hey, look, God is big enough to handle your doubt, right?" And that was part of doubting Thomas, right? He said, Jesus wasn't mad when Thomas was like, "Hey, I got a question. I've got doubts." He wasn't. It's not like Jesus couldn't handle it. He handled it just fine. And he said, one of the things he said about the Christian religion, the pastor said, he's like, "Hey, it's not about pressure. It's not a pressure proposal, right? It's about um it actually removes the pressure. It's about pleasure. The ability to be able to serve Jesus is about pleasure. It's about a life that is more profound, has meaning, has all these different it's a better life. It's not easier, and it's not necessarily without persecution. He said, but it takes all the pressure off. It's Jesus wasn't ever pressuring. It's a choice that you can make. And then there's consequences to your choice. You choose, or you choose not, or you choose not to choose, but ultimately it's up to you. It's not like, it's not, Jesus doesn't never pressured. And he said the doubting part of it, he can totally handle that. And here's a quote that he said that stuck with me, and then you highlighted it via different means. We didn't talk about this. It's just a text you sent today. But my pastor said, he said, the enemy of faith is not doubt, it's certainty. And he broke that down, and I kind of had to step back and think about that, because I'm like, okay, the enemy of faith is certainty, not doubt. And I think we mix that up. I think when we stop having doubts and stop having questions, and when we're so hard lined, and a lot of people call that, fundamentalism, and this idea that I have zero questions and zero doubts, like I know exactly what the answer is. He said that's the enemy to faith. And I found that fascinating, particularly as we dive into Faith Month, because I think a lot of us seek or we find comfort. We desire because we think there's comfort in no doubts. I just want to be a person who's full of faith, and that's it. Like I just don't want to doubt, right? And we actually had this conversation in the group. One of the guys said, "I know a guy, and everything he does, like he lives this life, and I know that that guy, has a 10 on his faith, on the Connect Life Circle." And I had to disagree. I'm like, that's an interesting perspective you have. If he were on this call, do you think he would rate himself as a 10? And he was like, I didn't think of it that way. I'm like, yeah, like I don't think he would. I don't know this guy. I don't know this guy from Adam. But I think all of us live in a place where we are, at least we're striving to get to a 10, but I don't think 10 is attainable in any of these areas in the Connect Life Store. That's what makes it beautiful, is that it's constant improvement. But point being, someone like Doubting Thomas, if you end the story with Doubting Thomas, with the Doubting Thomas part, and you don't dig deeper into what he did after and where he spread, and I think he went into India, and I need to do a deep dive on his life further because it got me really, really fascinated and interested in what happened after that. But the bottom line was they didn't stop at the doubt. The doubt was I would say the doubt was a launch pad. The doubt was a springboard that took him to another level, right? And we even talk about Paul. A lot of people like Paul. What a phenomenal example of someone who gives their life to serve Jesus, and he writes all these books, and they become part of the Bible, part of the canon of the New Testament. Well, what did Paul say about himself? Like that was fascinating to me, right? What does Paul say about himself? Like dig into that. The things that he talks about. He says, "I do the things I don't want to do." The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. I've got this thorn in my side that I asked Jesus to remove 3 times, and he said, "My strength is sufficient." Right? Like all these things. Like Paul was not like, if you asked him, he wasn't like, "Yeah, dude, I'm a 10. I'm living a 10." And like there's this constant idea of growth and struggle and not being at that place that we think we should be, because the spirit is strong but the flesh is weak, and or the spirit is willing but the flesh is weak. I mean, all these ideas of doubting, of not being where we want to be, but yet being used mightily. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, dude. I think a lot of us, myself included, seek to have that feeling of control, seek to have that feeling of certainty, whether that's um, in your bank account to have a certain number in your savings to know that that's your safety margin, or whether it's controlling your children to act a certain way. Um, yeah, I think that there's a big piece of that. This this quote, the opposite of faith isn't doubt, it's certainty and control. Like that's if you really think about that, that's tough to swallow, man. It's tough to swallow because I think all of us are in this place of wanting safety, comfort, um, certainty, right? I want to be certain that my savings account is going to last X number of days, months, years. I want to be certain that my retirement account is going to be able to provide the lifestyle that I want to live, and not have to work any longer. You know, there's this question of what does faith mean to you? We ask in the Kinetic Man. I'm looking at my notes right now, and I wrote down the opposite of fear. It's the belief in something bigger, or it's removing self doubt. It's a push. Another man said it in our group. He said it's a push to take action without really fully understanding the results, or the outcome. And I think like we love that idea. I think we love saying that, but like, are we really doing that? Are we really having faith in whatever that is, without knowing the outcome? Are we taking action without knowing the outcome? I would say probably more than not, not so much. It's kind of a gut check.
Yeah, man. And I think the beauty of it too is it's very liberating to acknowledge and really embrace that idea that the opposite of faith is not doubt. And it enables you to, look, the honest truth is it enables you to ask questions of yourself. right? That enables you to ask good questions of yourself and then to make decisions based off that. And then ultimately, those decisions lead to actions, right? As one of the members said that you highlighted, those actions. And that's what the critical part is. If your faith can drive you, if your doubt, here's what I love about doubt. Doubt typically forces you, if you desire to uh, gain clarity in whatever area of your life, doubt will typically force you into deeper research, deeper contemplation. It forces you deeper, right? It forces you um, to dig and to become more informed in order to gain that clarity or move towards the clarity that you desire and that you hope for. That is ultimately causing you to doubt. And then you end up, you inevitably, if you're going to end up in a place of more clarity. So you're going to be further along that path, whatever that looks like, whatever direction that takes you. And if anything, that builds your faith, right? It builds your faith because you get clarity, you get to see maybe where you're wrong, you get to see where you're right, you get to bolster that, you get to maybe change and reflect differently. And then at the end of the day, it drives you towards an action. Like that's the key, is to live a life of action. So what is that faith driving me to do? Well, I did a deep dive, and my faith in this God tells me that I serve a God who desires generosity. And what does that look like, dude? I'll tell you a quick story. I was in the grocery store. I've never seen this, in at least my experience in the United States. I've seen this elsewhere, but I've not seen it here. And we were in the grocery store. I was with my sweetest, most sensitive child, my middle child, and he's also my consequentially he's also my most generous. And so we're in the grocery store, and there's some ladies walking around holding kids, and you could just tell. Like I immediately was like, "Huh, interesting." And they filled up this cart, and I was kind of in a hurry. Otherwise, I would have taken a different approach from a lesson standpoint. But I was kind of in a hurry. We're trying to get home. I was cooked dinner. My other kids were at home by themselves. And what she did, she came up and she pointed to the cart. She's like, "Help me, help me." And she had the baby. And I was like, I immediately was just like, I know what this is. And because the cart had a bunch of stuff, and I was like, "Would you like me to help you buy your groceries?" And I knew Jake was there listening. I was like, Would you like me to help you buy your groceries?" And she said yes. I said, "Well," and this is where the kind of in a hurry. I was going to walk with her to the front and buy the groceries, but I knew she wasn't going to buy the groceries, right? And so ultimately, what happened is, I gave her some money. I talked with Jake about it, and then I looked for her later as we were on our way out because I saw a police officer was kind of following her, and they were gone. I was like, "Hey, I'm just curious. I'm assuming those ladies didn't buy that food, right?" And they're like, "Yeah, no." I said, so then I had a lesson with Jake. I was like, "Jake, here's the deal, dude. Like, we are obligated by our faith and what we believe as in our family in generosity. So we fulfilled a something that we desired to give to these ladies, because he was like, Dad, look how worried she is. Look how worried she is about her kids. Like he was like almost in tears. Like there's like she doesn't have food, and like it worked very well on him. I'm not
Yeah.
suggesting that they were well off or anything like that, but the intended reaction from was very very effective to Jake because he's such a
13-year-old.
sweet boy. Yeah. He's like, I just, how's he gonna feed? How are they gonna feed? Very, very legit questions. And I didn't minimize it. But then, we had to talk through the fact that they didn't get the groceries, and then they were gone, and they had the money that we gave them. But ultimately, it was a good conversation in our obligations because of what our faith calls us to be generous. What they do with the money is what they do with the money. That's no longer our concern. And I was explaining that to him, but it also forced me in the context of Faith Month to be like, what am I going to allow myself? What are the emotions I feel in this moment? Do I have faith that God honors and blesses this small gift that we gave? And should I have any emotions of cynicism or anything besides that? I made a choice. She didn't have a gun and take my money. I made a choice. So therefore, I had to analyze why I made that choice. And it was a great lesson for me and my son. All that being said, if we don't have context for the actions that we take, with a faith that we base it in, then one, we may not take action, and two, those actions may be, they just may not have as much meaning, and you may miss an opportunity not only to enrich yourself but to enrich those that you're most trying to impart these lessons on. And I think Jesus, that's why he does not fear and has no issue with our doubt, because he knows that's the process that he's walking with us through, right? And it's a fascinating idea that doubt is actually a catalyst to deeper faith, which is a catalyst to more meaningful action, which is a catalyst to a life well lived, and ideally a catalyst to for us getting to heaven and hearing, "Job well done, my good and faithful servant." Right?
Yeah, man. It makes me think there's a and I'm still, in this phase with my son, but he's very strong-willed. He has, he's gonna do it his way. He wants to do things himself. He's very independent. And that can be very challenging for me as a dad, just looking out for his safety, looking out for his well-being, trying to teach him. And we'll butt heads quite regularly. And there was a day in church quite a few months ago that I literally heard like, stop trying to control him. Stop trying to control him. And it was just a slap across the face. And I think, there's a part of us that always wants to be in control of everything. And as soon as I decided to kind of let go of some of the control, that's tight grip that I had on him, and just give him more space to try things, to explore, to make his own mistakes, to maybe get hurt, to learn the lesson on his own. Like the amount of times that we butt head has decreased over time. Um, and I think that, sometimes uh, the action is actually inaction, right? The action is stop trying to control so much. Stop trying to do everything on your own. Stop trying to be certain, right? Um,
Would you call
and
that active passivity though? Like it's intentional,
it's
right?
intentional,
Stopping sometimes is harder than
100%.
going, and it's a decision. It's
Yeah.
not a it's and I know exactly what you're saying. I want to make sure it's not lost. You're not choosing to do nothing. I'm sorry. You're not doing nothing. You're choosing to potentially do nothing with a specific, well thought out and desired end state. And that end state doesn't necessarily mean he conforms to something you do. It's okay. I am choosing to let you learn a lesson here. I will make sure you're safe to an extent, but I am choosing to give up control and allow you to. And there's a lesson in that, right?
And I
So
bet
it's
you,
not passive. It's not
right.
passive. Like you're very intentional with your decision, because sometimes if inaction is a decision, then it is an action in and of itself, right? It's not a do nothing passive mind state.
Yeah. I bet you that God looking up from above probably doing the same thing, right?
Well, dude,
Like,
he's a god. He could control anything. He could have any outcome he wanted, right? He
yeah,
doesn't need our piddly generosity. He doesn't need our money. He's
yeah,
God of all resources. And so, yeah, I agree with you 100%. Like I think he constantly is doing that.
yeah. Like, yeah, I'm gonna make this hard on you so you can learn it this way, right?
What and that's what I love about the idea that the pastor said. It's never pressure. Jesus never is pressuring. Like
Yeah,
he's not pressuring. You make a choice. But there's a consequence. There's a consequence. You just have to be willing to accept it, right?
that's right. The other question that we ask is, when was your faith most tested? And that's an interesting thought exercise, and interesting um, look at when was your faith most tested, and what happened to change that faith. more often than not, that faith is tested in hard situations, right? In failures, in difficulty, in challenging times. It's not. It's not in certainty. It's not in, you know, you controlling the situation. That's what your faith is tested, and that's when it actually really comes to light.
Yeah. I mean, we have guys that in the group that have gone through some significant life events, like the loss of a child. We've had that with a couple guys in the group, and man, you want to talk about faith? You want to talk about being shaken? You want to talk about where these men specifically were and are now? Pretty crazy conversations there, right? And ultimately, I think we can all identify those places or those times and really analyze them, and then especially as with the passage of time, you can look back because what's interesting, what's fascinating, both those guys that I'm thinking about, they both also said, you know, with some passage of time and seeing how things have gone, they both said, I wouldn't change anything. And you're like, ooh,
Like what?
ooh. Well, in the moment, I am certain that that was not how they felt, right? And they
Right.
said that. And so that goes to the bigger picture too of the doubt. Like my cycle has regularly been doubt this thing, have faith in an outcome. The outcome isn't necessarily what I desired or thought it would be, but there's an outcome in that situation. And then as I look back, I'm like, oh man, thank you God. Like whatever that was, like there's a benefit from it. And again, that bolsters my faith, but it also is knowing, well, the next time I have a thing, there's going to be a result, and if I'm faithful to give that to my God and believe that the outcome will be something that can be used for His glory, then it just changes the whole dynamic, right? Changes the whole dynamic. And again, I'm not talking about genie in a bottle, like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. I give it to you, God, and you give me what I want in the future. Like that's not the basis of my faith. It's knowing that whatever that is will at some point, this side of heaven or the other, will have a greater meaning to it. And that's my faith. But there's a lot of doubt in that too. But it just continually, that's what a good God we serve, is that um, he continuously shows, hey dude, I got it. I got it. I'm in control.
But it in our TKM members' words, Alan Greer, it's gonna be okay.
It's gonna be okay.
It's gonna be
It's gonna be
okay.
okay. Amen. Well,
Amen.
giddy up. I love it. I love it. So don't fear doubt. Don't fear doubt. When your faith is shaken, I think that's okay. God is not afraid of your questions. He's probably answered them a billion, zillion, gajillion times. So, there's no threat there. And the same is true as we talk about our faith and defend our faith or whatever. Like I never defend my faith. I don't have to. Jesus did, right? And
That's
so
right.
as we look at this conversation and also the way that we interact with others, I would just encourage people, especially Christians, I would encourage you, you don't have to fight and get angry and defend your faith. Like Jesus, he's big enough. Like he did it. He took care of it. So you just live in it, be loving, and ultimately let the love drive the actions the way you treat other people. And that speaks volumes, right? That speaks volumes.
Love it.
Giddy up.
Giddy
Giddy
up.
up.
See ya.
See ya.